What if every story you wrote came true, but at a deadly cost? Struggling writer Gavin Reed discovered an ancient notebook with the power to bring his words to life. At first, it seemed like a miracle. Fame, fortune, and success just kind of fell into his lap with every page he filled. But when fiction starts bleeding into reality with chilling consequences, Gavin realizes that the notebook's gifts come at a price far greater than he imagined. As the lines between imagination and existence blur, Gavin needs to decide, will he control the story, or will the story control him? Welcome, everybody, to Tales of the Beard, the only podcast where the stories are as epic as the beards, and twice as mysterious. Tonight, we've got a tale that's going to make you rethink your next trip to the stationery aisle. What if the pen really is mightier than the sword? And what if the pen wrote your fate? Buckle up, folks. It's time for the Ghostwriter's Notebook, where every word could be your last. Gavin Reed, he leaned back in his chair, staring at the blank screen in front of him. The cursor blinked mockingly, each pulse a reminder of how utterly struck he was. His editor's voice echoed in his head. "This is your last chance, Gavin. Miss this deadline, and we are done." He groaned, rubbing his temples. "Just one idea," he muttered to himself. "One idea, and I can get back on track." A sudden gust of wind rattled the attic windows. Gavin frowned. He didn't remember leaving any windows open. Standing up, he noticed a faint chill in the air. Then something fell from the cluttered bookshelf behind him, a soft thud breaking the silence. When he turned, his eyes locked on a leather-bound notebook lying on the floor. It wasn't one he recognized. The cover was cracked and worn, embossed with a strange symbol, a quill wrapped in what looked like thorny vines. Gavin hesitated before picking it up. The leather felt warm in his hands, almost pulsing, as if it had a heartbeat. He flipped it open. The pages were yellowed but empty. "A sign from the universe," he whispered with a bitter chuckle. "Sure, why not?" Grabbing a pen, Gavin scrawled across the top of the first page and wrote, "The Midnight Visitor." The words flowed effortlessly. He described a shadowy figure knocking on a door at midnight. Their intentions were unclear. It felt like someone was kind of guiding his hand. He didn't care. For the first time in weeks, the story, it came alive. Satisfied, he closed the notebook and headed to bed. At exactly midnight, a knock echoed through the house. Gavin shot right up out of bed, heart hammering in his chest. It had to be a dream, right? He strained his eyes, waiting. Then another knock, louder, more insistent. "Who in the hell?" he muttered, grabbing his phone. No missed calls, no text messages. So he creeps downstairs, every floorboard just creaking under his weight. The front door loomed ahead, its frosted glass shimmering in the moonlight. The knocking continued in a steady, rhythmic pattern. Against every instinct screaming at him to stop, Gavin unlocks the door and pulls it open. There's nobody there. A chill runs down his spine. On the porch, though, lay a small, brown package tied with twine. A note was attached. "Your story needs an ending." Gavin slammed the door shut and locks it, his hands trembling, stared at the package. Something about it felt wrong, but curiosity won out. Slowly, he untied the twine and peeled back the paper. Inside was a fountain pen, its black surface glinting in the dim light. The same thorny quill symbol from the notebook was etched onto the barrel. The next morning, Gavin couldn't shake the events of the night before. The notebook sat on his desk untouched, but it seemed to beckon him. Again, against his better judgment, he flips it open. The story he'd written was still there, but now there was extra details. The shadowy figure had left a package in the story. Gavin's blood ran cold. He hadn't written that. Gripping the pen, he decided to test something. He wrote a simple sentence. The writer finds a $100 bill under his keyboard. A moment later, he lifted his keyboard. His breath hitched. There, crisp and real, was a $100 bill. Over the next few days, Gavin's life transformed. He wrote about finding success, and suddenly emails from publishers flooded his inbox. He wrote about reconnecting with old friends, and his phone started to buzz with texts from people he hadn't spoken to in years. But things started to go wrong. One night he wrote a scene about a man chased through the woods by an unknown force. The next morning, news broke about a local man found dead in the woods, his body mangled as if by something not entirely human. Gavin stared at the screen horrified. Had he done that? Desperate for answers, Gavin scoured the internet looking for any clues about the notebook's origins. He found a single forum post buried deep within a thread. Beware the ghostwriter's notebook. It grants your desires, but always at a price. That night, the knocking returned, but this time, Gavin didn't open the door. He shouted instead, "What do you want from me?" A voice, soft and raspy, whispered through the door. "You know the price, Gavin. Keep writing, or pay the debt." Gavin realized he was trapped. The notebook gave him everything he wanted, but it also fed off his stories, turning fiction into reality, often with deadly consequences. He tried to stop using it, but the world around him began to unravel. His bills, they piled up. Friends, they vanished. His career crumbled. The notebook was both a gift and a curse. In a final act of desperation, Gavin wrote a story about himself, how a struggling writer overcame the curse by outsmarting the entity that controlled the notebook. The pages glowed as he wrote the last line, and with that, the writer was free. The notebook, it burst into flames, leaving only ashes. Gavin collapsed, exhausted, but relieved. A week later, Gavin's book hit the bestsellers list. The Ghostwriter's Notebook. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece. But Gavin, he knew better. He'd won the battle, but deep down, he sensed the war wasn't over. Late at night, he still heard the whispers, and sometimes, when he passed by the attic, he swore he saw the faint outline of a notebook waiting in the shadows. Because stories never really end. Well, this one does, though, unfortunately. And let me tell you, that was a pretty crazy ride. Folks, don't get too comfortable, because next week, we're coming back with another tale that's going to leave you questioning everything and probably checking under your bed. If you thought the Ghostwriter's Notebook was wild, just wait till you hear what we've got cooking. Until then, though, remember, always check the fine print, especially if it's written in blood. We'll catch you next week, and we can't thank you enough for taking some time out of your busy day to listen to Tales of the Beard, the Ghostwriter's Notebook. Take care, everybody.